Hey there everyone, my name's Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Let's see what's on the bench this week. This week on the bench, we've still got 3 Enterprise E's that we are working on. One is being repaired, one is a static build, and one is a lighted build. So let's get right at it. But before we get started, why not take a moment and click the subscribe button. And while you're here, click on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Enterprise E repair. Starting off the week back with the repair work on this particular Enterprise E, looking at the seam work on the neck. The neck was taken apart and we're putting it back together and cleaning up the seam. Again, I am using Perfect Plastic Putty. I've done 1 round so far. This is the 2nd round. And the nice thing about the Perfect Plastic Putty, and I'm not going to do all of this on camera, but the really nice thing about it is that you can essentially sand it with water. So I don't need to take any sandpaper to this at all. I can use water on a Q-tip and I can smooth out the putty on this seam and I can avoid damaging the beautiful paintwork all around this area. This is going to be important when it gets time to work on the area on the bottom of the saucer. So as you can start to see, I am smoothing this out. There should only be maybe a couple small little areas in here that I'll need to worry about before I lay down some paint to touch this up. So I'm going to continue with my Q-tips and my water, clean up this seam. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So here's a look at that seam now fully smoothed out. Again, all I used was a Q-tip and water, which is really nice for avoiding all of that detail. So once this fully dries, I'm going to hand touch up with a brush the paint by adding the base color to that section. There's also a little bit of area just underneath there from where it got sticky, where it needs to be touched up. I'm going to hand touch that up because I need to avoid the detail work there. The seam's been smoothed out and I've put the paint on, so it looks relatively decent for a repair job there. One of the issues I am running into is that there is some discoloration in different areas of the hull, again because the clear coat had become soft again and picked up some dirt and whatever. So I am trying to clean that up where possible, but where it gets into the Aztec pattern without redoing the Aztec patterning, it's going to be very difficult to try to get that clean. So some of it will not be able to be dealt with, but I am dealing with as much as I possibly can. So this seam has been dealt with, it's been repainted, that's going to dry. I'm going to work now on under the saucer, which has been puttied all around first round. Again, I'm going to take the Q-tip and I'm going to smooth out, sand down that with the water and a Q-tip, and we'll see how many more rounds of putty will need to go on that. Again, trying to avoid all of this Aztec patterning detail, all the little decals that like the little tiny, let's see if I can even, yeah, like one right there. There's just like a little red one there. There's these little tiny ones scattered all throughout that match up with the studio model. So there's one right over here and here, so I need to avoid those as well. So I'm going to do my best to get this smoothed out, and I'll do the same thing, probably repaint that leading edge by hand once I get it smoothed out. I've done an initial paint of the seam of the saucer, and that dried overnight, and now I'm going through and I'm doing a bit of a heavier coat of paint, just dabbing it along here. Essentially, I am making use of the paint as a bit of a filler for any small discrepancies in the surface. The paint will flow wherever it needs to. This is going to be more paint than I would typically put on a surface, but in this case, where it is delicate repair work, it's going to work in my favor doing that. So I just did an initial paint coat, and now I'm going through and letting the paint flow to the locations it needs to. And it'll never be a perfect seam like when you do the kit from scratch, but hopefully this will give a decent repair job on this, because I don't want to damage the detail paint, because that is a whole other world if that has to be repaired. I'm starting to wonder how many times I've said I don't want to damage the detail work. If you've been counting, let me know in the comments below. I'm kind of curious. So while the paint on the seam on the bottom of the saucer dries and sets, I'm looking through to see the decal work that needs to be repaired. Fortunately, there isn't a whole lot of it, but one notable piece here is the pinstriping on the back of the panel here. That will need to be patched. So I've gone through and I've pulled out the decal sets that I created for doing all those little tiny details on the ship. And because I printed several of them, I've got more of that pinstriping. So I'm going to cut a small section of the red pinstriping and see if I can lay it in and get it to blend in properly, so that I don't have to go through, remove the old decal and put a whole brand new one out. Now I was looking at these on the nacelles, and those are kit provided decals, so I don't have copies of those. I either need to make my own replacements, or what I think I might do is see if I can just touch those up with a little bit of paint. That might be the way to go on that. Other than that, I need to create some decals to go on the chiller grills, since it looks like I missed that detail first time around. And since that video didn't really show the area where the pinstripe is missing a section, here's a photograph that really shows that area that needs to be patched. The pinstripe decal has been patched, looks really good, look even better once the clear coat goes on top of that. I'm probably going to deal with the issues here on these decals with paint, since I don't have extras of those. If we turn this onto its belly, let me show you the saucer seam. It's starting to look pretty decent, but there are some areas where it's uneven, and if you look at it in the right light, just tilt it the right way, you can see those unevennesses. So I'm going to probably take some sandpaper and very, very carefully attempt to smooth that out and get as good of a seam on here as possible. There's some areas where it's just never going to be the same, especially back here underneath the impulse engines, because that just never sat down properly when the client tried to put it back together. So those I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot with, but at least if we can try to get the majority of this seam to look as close to original as we can, that will be a win. So I'm going to just take some paper, sandpaper, sand around. I'm going to be extremely, extremely careful not to damage any of the paint detail on the Aztec paneling here. Now, before we move on to the other two projects that are on the bench this week, every so often I'm going to want to highlight another YouTube channel, either one that's been really helpful to me in my model building journey, or somebody who is just getting started on their model building content creation journey. I remember that it wasn't all that long ago that I was struggling to reach my first 100 subscribers, and I didn't know if anybody was watching, and any support that I got was so appreciated. So this week, I want to highlight James Lamosi. If you've ever wanted to get in on the ground level of a brand new YouTube channel in the model building arena, now is your chance. Go over and see James Lamosi's channel. He is starting to build the 1400 scale Enterprise D, which is actually a project we're going to be doing here on this channel in the non-too-distant future. So go over to his channel, make sure that you watch his videos, hit the subscribe button, and let him know in his comments that Canadian Starships sent you. Enterprise D static build. Now looking at the static model, so far the entire thing's been put together, and I've been looking at some of the color options for the hull, and I've had to sand down some of that on the primary hull there. But what I'm going to be doing now is working on the masking of the secondary hull. I'm not sure how much is going to pick up on camera here, but if I tilt it at the right angle, you can see some of the masking on there because I'm using the blue masking, and these are tiny, tiny, tiny window masks, The deal is that with it being painted black with the primer and then masks, I'll pull those off and the windows will be all black as per the request of the client. Now there are some that need to be adjusted or replaced on this side because it's been quite a while since I put those on, and there are a lot that have to be done on the other side. Once that is done, I'm going to be moving on to the windows on the bottom portion of the primary hull. There are some really tiny ones in the recessed area here. Those will probably need the same size, tiny window masks, but I'll be focusing on these dormer window masks that'll be going on. Those will be the ones that will be more of the show items when done. So I've gotten my Cameo 4 out, and I have printed up some of the tiniest window masks you will ever see. Again, not quite sure how much of this will come out on camera, but I'm going to be just sitting down and putting windows in with a pair of tweezers for the next little while. A very quick handheld up close look at the masking on the secondary hull. These things are absolutely tiny. Don't worry about how rough all of that paint looks. That's some overspray from the top of the saucer that'll be cleaned up. So these are teeny tiny little window masks, and I'm using a battery powered light. Just give myself enough light to be able to actually see where I'm placing these things. And there's a couple different sizes of masks that are going on that, and it is tricky work. I'm hoping that the results when all said and done are definitely worth it. So I'm going to put a light coat of black primer over top of this. 1, to clean it up a little bit, and 2, to lock those little tiny masks in place because they are so easy just to kind of rub off and lose. So that will go on, and we will get that ready to go for the next batch of windows, which I have to flip the ship over to get the ones on top of the pylons. With those window masks on, I've gone over this with a black coat of primer, and that'll just seal those in. I am now going to flip over and add the window masks that are all along here, and then that will get another cleanup coat of black to seal those in. And that will be it on this particular kit for this week. Enterprise E lighted build. Not a whole lot to say about the lighted kit this week other than I continued the arduous task of cleaning out windows. And all of the windows that are over on the port side that have been fully cleaned out are ones that I have done this week. Plus I finished up a bunch on this side. And again, they are turning out very nice as per usual. Again, this is the section of missing windows over here. I think they're going to turn out so much better by drilling out the larger sections and masking. I also, once the windows that have been molded in are cleaned out, I'm going to be getting rid of those 2 improperly molded windows around the front and putting the 4 larger ones in. I'm probably going to clear out a larger section and mask. I think that's going to be the easiest way to deal with it this time around. But we're getting much closer. Now my question is, do you think I'm going to get the rest of the windows done by the end of next week's update? Let me know in the comment section. Yes, I'm going to get them all done on the top saucer. No, you don't have a chance. Let me know in the comments below. And that's going to wrap it up for What's on the Bench this week. Are you enjoying this weekly format? I know I am. You know what? It's actually forcing me to get a little bit more work done on all the projects because I need to have content for these videos, so it's very motivating for me. You know, I'm really looking forward to getting that big 650 scale Enterprise D in. I can't wait for it to arrive and get my hands into starting that project. I've also heard that some of you have managed to get in on that deal and you've been able to get an order in for that kit. That is fantastic. I want to see all of your work. Please make sure that you are posting on all the various Facebook groups so that we can share the love of this big, huge Enterprise D kit and see how everybody is doing it. I'm really interested to see how that works out. So I hope you've enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure that you hit that like button. If you're new to my channel or you haven't done so yet, why not hit that subscribe button today? You'll make me very happy if you do. But for now, my name is Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Have a great day, everyone.